it sounds okay.
Oops. Okay, can you unmute yourself, Moshe? I'm hearing you through Jez's phones. So I've just muted him. So can you unmute yourself? Can you unmute yourself, Moshe?
Okay.
That's it, great, okay.
If you can, send me late. I would like later on to have this recording myself.
Yes, of course, that's absolutely no problem. So let me just say welcome to everyone and welcome Moshe. I record it for there's quite a few people who are traveling but had wanted to listen, so they will have the recording later, and obviously I'll send it to you, Moshe, as well. Malcolm, I'm going to turn your video off once we start because it's still doing that intermittent whatever, and also that improves the quality anyway. So Moshe, let's not spend any more time, but thank you so much for joining us, and we're looking forward to this session. Over to you.
Okay, so how long do I have? Till when?
An hour.
An hour. So what I propose to do is that I will speak for about 45 minutes, and more or less, and then I leave time for questions, discussions, other things if you want, not only about what I spoke at the lecture, you can speak about everything. So as long as I can tell you, or if I know about those things, I will be very happy to speak with you. Okay, I'm speaking about the identity of Israel, which is defined today, not in the past it wasn't, but it is defined as a Jewish and democratic state. So if I go back, I'll start with some beginning remarks. If I go back to the state of Israel, even before the state of Israel, the identity of Israel as a Jewish and democratic was foundational from the beginning, from the establishment of the state. The Zionist movement that was launched by Theodor Herzl at the end of the 19th century, from the beginning was a Jewish and democratic movement, because the idea was that there's no other really any option but to work in a democratic system. And the Yishuv in Israel, Yishuv is the time under the British mandate from the 1920s to the establishment of the state in 1948. It was also conducted itself on democratic principles and institutions. So the democracy was not as crucial as Judaism, but it was the normal thing in the history of the state of Israel. The major explicit articulation of a compounded Jewish democratic identity is the Declaration of Independence. You can't find the word democracy there, but you'll have democratic key values as equality between all the citizens and cultures, without any discrimination on religion, gender, etc. So you have democratic principles. Of course, Judaism is the basic, because there is the whole history of the Jewish people and the dream about of coming back to the land of Israel. Later on, crucial decisions of the Israeli Supreme Court were based on democratic ideas, democratic liberal ideas, like free speech, freedom in all areas, etc. In 1992, the Knesset passed two laws: the law about human dignity and freedom, and the law of freedom of profession. And these basic laws were interpreted by the Supreme Court President Barak as being a sort of constitutional revolution. Because now we, the Israelis, after 1992, have some part, at least, of constitution, because those laws are above other laws. They need, it's not easy to change them. So you have to interpret other laws according to these two basic laws. And there was a dispute about it, but that's the way the Supreme Court works since then. Okay? The change, really, if you speak about the law system, the change came, at least in part, in 2018, when there was the nation state law, and that law gave some sort of preference to the Jewish identity over the democratic identity. As regards to language, that Israel is the official language, not the Arabic won't be the second official language, but a language that you can use, but not an official language, and that all the places you want to build should be more for Jews, etc. Over the years, many controversies in Israel were about the meaning of the Jewish identity of Israel, the democratic character of Israel, and even and more the combination of Jewish, or the balance that ought to be between the Judaism part and the democratic part. For many, the emphasis upon Israel's Jewish character comes at the expense of its democratic identity. For other, democracy trumps Jewishness. But nevertheless, the need to have some sort of integration between Jewish and democratic principle is basic. It's basic. And nobody really spoke about having dictatorship in Israel. This is a sort of preference. Now we are coming to what happened in the last 2 decades, especially in the last 2 decades. There you can see there was some change. The change was also demographic, but the change was also cultural. Israel, in some points, becomes more Jewish and less democratic, or at least less liberal democratic. It still is a compound Jewish and democratic system, but it's less. I will stress the fields where is this sort of contradiction between the Jewish and the democratic one. But if you look at the societies, the different groups in Israel, then you can see that the majority of the Jews tend more towards Jewishness than toward democracy. For instance, Haredim, great part of religious Zionists, great part of traditional Oriental Masortiim, and they are the majority. Little majority, but majority. The other side, the more secular, center-left, they tend more towards the democratic side, also for the Jewish side, but more to the democratic side. So there is sort of clash that is along the last 20 years, and now we can see it really during the demonstrations in the last month, where you have really two camps. You have the camp that goes to demonstration, and they stress all the time that they want Israel to be liberal democracy, a normal liberal democracy. And you have the people who are for the reform of the system of government. They don't see it as anti-democratic. I'll come to it later on. And they basically are more from the Jewish side, or the nationalistic Jewish side. When it comes to the Arabs, it's interesting, because when the Arab minority in Israel, which is 21%, when they speak versus the Jews, they speak in democratic way. They want Israel stop being a Jewish state. They want Israel to be a state of all of its citizens, like a liberal democratic state, civic state. So they want democracy. But that is when it comes to the relations between them and the Jewish majority. Because they believe that if Israel will stop being a Jewish state, they will be equal. But when it comes to the Arab society inside, they are the less democratic from all the sections within Israeli society. More than Haredim, certainly more than religious Zionists and Oriental Jews. The Arab society in Israel is very far away from democratic culture when it comes to women, when it comes to LGTB, when it comes to ideas and values like pluralism and tolerance. They are not there. They are not there. Even the violence. Most of the violence in Israel is Arabic violence. Most of the murders in Israel are Arabs who kill Arabs. And the Israeli state is also responsible because we, as a state, the Jewish and democratic state didn't really give it a lot of pressure in order to change it. But what about the Arab leaders? The Arab religious leaders, the Arab political leaders? So here I must say that you must be cautious here. And the left many times doesn't look at it this way, but that's the fact, that the Arabs really want democracy when it comes to the state, that the state won't be a Jewish state, but only democratic state. But when it comes to their society, they are far away from democracy. You need revolution in order to change the culture there. Okay? So, in fact, let's say, I'll say with my conclusion, I don't see, in contrast to what many people say today, especially in the center left more than center, there are differences between the left, which is a very small minority in Israel today. Most of the people who define themselves as left turn to center later on, like myself, during the years. After the Intifada of the 2000s, etc., they changed the point of view. We will speak about center left, which is also center left, and there are differences between center and left in many issues. So when it comes to the center left in Israel, Jewishness is also very important. People understand the problems that we face when it comes to the Palestinians in the West Bank. It's not an easy case. But when the left itself would like Israel to be much more civic democratic state. They are against, they want separation of religion and state in Israel, which is not an option. Because Judaism is not like Christianity or Protestant Christianity, like in America. It can't be, not in England. In England, there's no separation of church state, as we saw now, when King Charles III became king now. And it was a religious ceremony, and he is the head of the Anglican Church. No separation of church state, but no coercion of other religions. In Israel, we don't have separation of church and state, and we do have coercion of other, not Christians or Muslims, but other Jews who are not Orthodox, secular, Reform, conservative. There is coercion. So here we are unique. In the West, today, after many years, even Italy, Ireland, Catholic states, Spain, they don't have coercion. And Israel has. So now we are closer to states like Greece and East Europe in this regard. Democracies, but with coercion of religion over state. Okay, so again, what I want to say is I don't see, against what the left think, I don't see any really immediate problem of Israel becoming dictatorship. The majority of the Israelis from the right don't want to have dictator. Most of the religious people don't want to have a dictator. So it's not a question of dictatorship. It's not that democracy will come to dictatorship. The question is whether democratic and liberal values will become weaker. And Israel will be like a third-rate or second-rate democracy. Not a dictatorship, but second-rate democracy. So I want to stress now the key issues where I can see the clash between the Judaism side, the Jewish side, and the Jewishness of the state and the democratic identity of the state. Number one certainly is the Palestinian part. In the past, think about England during Churchill. How would you define England, the system of government in England, Great Britain, during the Second World War? Everybody defined Britain as democracy. Churchill spoke a lot about the Western democracy that faces fascism, Nazism. So Britain was regarded as democracy. But in fact, when you look to the British Empire in 1940, when Churchill delivered his key speeches, when he was so important that he was such a leader that changed history, and probably if somebody else was elected as prime minister from the Conservative Party, probably England would have made a peace with Germany. So during that time, when Churchill really fought for democracy, the British Empire wasn't a democracy because in England, in Wales, in Ireland, there was I don't speak now in Northern Ireland, there was democracy. Ireland was already later on, it was already independent state at that time. So Wales and Scotland and other places, England was democracy. But when you look at the British Empire in general, you look at India, the crown, I mean, there was the key in the crown, the diamond in the crown, as it was called. And you look at Africa, in Kenya, and you look at the other places in Africa, and you look at Southeast Asia, and you see the places that the colonialism, the British colonialism was still very strong. There wasn't any democracy. It was a dictatorship by the British on the people who lived there. So the vast majority of the inhabitants of the English or British Empire lived under dictatorship. And yet, because in Britain itself, the system was democratic, Britain, and because of the history, because of the parliament in the late 17th century, in the revolution of 1688, 89. So Britain was seen not only as democracy, but as the father of democracy, the mother of democracy. Today, if you look at Britain in 1940, you wouldn't define Britain as democracy, as when you look at the British Empire. Because you don't make this separation. And that's why we have today, we are the only one. The same thing was about France. The same thing was other places where there was colonialism in the 19th and 20th century. But when you look on Israel, and I don't say that the West Bank is part of colonialism, because the West Bank was basic land of Israel. When the Bible speaks about the land of Israel, is usually the West Bank. It's Bethel, Alon Moreh, Post Jerusalem, but all those places. So this is the land of Israel. It's not like you go to Africa or to a place in Asia, because of financial reasons or because of political reasons, etc. So I don't say it's a colonialism. But if you look at Israel, then you can say that the borders of the Jewish democratic state end in the Green Line. Because when you look at the relations between Jews and Palestinians who live in the West Bank, they live under dictatorship. because they don't have really a state. The Palestinian Authority is very weak. They don't have really a state of their own. They are not part of some sort of confederation between the Palestinian Authority and Jordan. And they are not annexed to Israel and having citizens' rights in Israel. They can't vote for the Knesset. And Israel is there since 1967, the vast majority of years from the independence. We had only 19 years without this conquest. So this is the key problem where we can see a contrast between the Jewish and the democratic identity of the state of Israel. Now, I am not one of those who think there is an easy solution for the Palestinian problem. In fact, I don't believe there can be a solution in the near future between Jews and Palestinians. Why? Because even if you have a moderate government in Israel for many years, that we didn't have so for many, many years, the last government we had before was with right, center, and left, and Arabs, by Bennett, but it wasn't a center-left government. If we will have, who knows, center-left government with Gantz and with Lapid, they can't accept any treaty that moderate Palestinians will accept because of security reasons, first of all. You can't go back from the Bekaa Valley, from the Jordan Valley. You must have Israeli forces on Jordan River. Because if you want Israeli forces on the Jordan River, one day, when probably Jordan will become a Palestinian state or fundamentalistic Islamic state, and that's probably will happen sooner or later, you'll have a huge land that will start in Iran or Iraq, and will go to the place where I live, Petah Tikva, Kfar Saba. If there will be a Palestinian state without Israeli soldiers along the Jordan River, that will be, to be or not to be, issue for the independent Jewish state. And Palestinians won't accept Israeli soldiers. When there was discussions between Abu Mazen and Olmert, and Olmert was willing to give back about 96% of the West Bank back to the Palestinians. They have a huge discussion, and Palestinians said, okay, we'll accept 3 years that Israeli soldiers will be on the Jordan River. 3 years are nothing. You need at least 50, 100 years. We don't know what will happen in 20, 25 years. And that's a question of existence. Because then everything will be smuggled into the West Bank, and you'll have a fundamentalistic. The Palestinian Authority is very weak. It won't be the ruler there. The ruler will be Hamas. And then you'll have bombarded. What we have today from Gaza, we'll have from the West Bank. But West Bank is all over road number 6. It's along Israel. It's on the Ben Gurion airport and all the cities nearby. That are key cities in the center. We'll have to conquest it again. And that's only one problem. What about Temple Mount? No majority of Jews will give full some authority to Palestinians on Har HaBayit. No way. There will be blood between Jews here, and a lot of blood, because of its importance for many Jews as a symbol, and of hopes that one day there will be the third temple there. And these feelings are only stronger now than they used to be in the past. And the Palestinians are not willing to have, with Barak, when in Camp David, no compromise on Temple Mount. Only Palestinian authority or Arab authority or Muslim authority, but no partnership between Jews and Arabs there. And what about the right of coming back to the land? Most of the Palestinians who live in camps in the West Bank keep the keys of their houses, not there, of their fathers and mothers, till now, and the roads are not roads of the place, but the roads of the places where they used to live in Palestine. It's not an abstract idea. There isn't any leader who is willing to come to the Palestinian people around the world and tell them, forget from this issue of the right of return. If there will be a compromise, it won't be what people in Israel and the left think, we'll take only 50,000 Palestinians as a symbol. No way. There won't be any legitimacy for that. That's why Arafat and Abu Mazen didn't go to, one of the reasons they didn't go to treaties. So in the next years, there isn't any real option that Israel will go back from the West Bank. And we can't go by ourselves like we've done with Gaza, because we'll get Hamas there as we got in Gaza. And that will be much more severe because it's in the center of the land. Abba even called it Auschwitz borders. And I'm not a person of the right. I was against settlements all my life. I was for Rabin. I was for the Oslo process. But that's, you have to look at reality. Straight. You can't live in dreams. So what can be done? From one side, we can't be really democracy when we really rule on 2.5 million of Palestinians who don't have any rights. That's a huge democratic problem. What the right see as no problem, but it is a real problem. From the other side, we can't now have any peace and we'll go back and then they'll have their state, finish. Like some people in the left think. But about 90% of the Jews in Israel don't accept. They want peace, but not believe in this peace now. They are willing to go back. 55% more or less of Israelis are willing to go back. Only when there will be a secure settlement between Jews and Palestinians, and there won't be any secure settlement. So what can be done? What can be done is what this government will never do, which is an extreme right government. What can be done is weakening the rule of Israel on Palestine, giving them much more rights, more economic options. Like now we give to Gaza, and that's why Hamas don't go to the clash now. People work in Israel. More people will work in Israel. Easier path. Some of them maybe in time will be able to get some citizenship in Israel. You have to do important steps towards improving their situation, even if you don't have any solution now or in the near future. You have to strengthen the Palestinian Authority and try to do what you can to avoid the rising of Hamas as the leading force in the West Bank, what this government doesn't want to do. And even Bennett didn't meet Abu Mazen, didn't want to recognize him. Only Gantz met him. And Yair Lapid, I think also, Yair Lapid. So you have to take some measures in order to try to make the dictatorship that Israel has over Palestinians in the West Bank to be less dictator. And you have also to work hard to improve the status and the situation of the Palestinians in Gaza. We ruled Gaza for many years. Now we don't. Ariel Sharon went back during the disengagement, and we took forcefully so many settlers out, and the Palestinians didn't do anything to use it for their advantage. They didn't build anything. The Hamas got weapons and weapons and weapons and didn't try to have those settlements to have like a new places for people to live and to live as in a better economic situation. But still Israel has a lot to do. And there are different ideas. So this is one issue, the most important problem that Israel faces, and the most of the Jews don't want to think about it in Israel. But when you look to the Jews in America, especially to the young generation, for them, after they learn in the American universities, which are very left-wing and progressive, in fields like myself, like political science, sociology, history, literature, all those humanistic subjects, they become very anti-Israelis. Some of them support BDS. Many of them support BDS. The tension between the majority of the young generation of the Jews, the majority of them are liberals and progressive, and they are less Jewish in contrast to their parents. That clash between them and the majority of the young Israelis will become more right-wing, more traditional, more Jewish and less democratic liberal. The clash is widened all the time. It's stronger all the time. And they really see the problem of the Palestinians, but they don't see the complexity of the situation that I try to show you now. For me, this is a huge problem. It's also with many of the young generation in Britain. In the reform movement, in the liberal side of the British Jews in England. It's not like in America, but still, it's an issue. If this clash will become stronger and stronger, and if the reform or the revolution, people see it differently, in the system of government of Israel and the system of the judiciary in Israel will succeed, it probably won't succeed. The street and Biden probably won. And Netanyahu won't be able with Yariv Levin to deliver the plan, the original plan. But if this was a real option, then the clash would be even stronger, because they would have seen Israel as non-democratic state, even if it's a complex of democratic and non-democratic, but they would see it as non-democratic. It's still an issue, and the system of government and the religious power and the force that the religious institute have in Israel that they hate so much, and it's against the reform and conservative. So we have to tackle all these things, and of course, this government can't do anything in this regard. It's the worst of government ever when it comes to Israel-diaspora relations. I do hope that the next government will be a government with the Likud after Netanyahu and the center, and they will be able to have a more moderate government. Much more moderate government. Because in the Likud are also moderate section. Not extreme right. There is the extreme right section, but there is the moderate section, which is center left. Center right. So center right and center left can sit together. The main force will be center. And then you can speak differently with Jews, even young generation of Jews around the world. So that was the first issue. The second issue is what I said before, that the religious society, the religious group, Haredi, religious Zionists, strong traditionals, become more ethnocentric, less universalistic, and they stress the Jewish side over the democratic side. The third problem is the legitimation that the heirs of Rabbi Kahana get today. There was a ban on them. And now if somebody can become a minister, an important minister, in Israel, and he can be a racist, and that's normal. And that's because of Netanyahu. We gave him an hechsher. I speak about Ben Gvir. If you can have somebody like that, and you can have an extreme right like Smotrich, and that's normal. And he calls himself religious Zionism. That was the religious Zionism in the past. This is the majority of religious Zionists of today. In the young generation of religious Zionists, you have at least 40% who are moderate, not left-wing, but center-right, moderate, modern Orthodox, soft Orthodox. People who go to non-kosher pubs, the young generation below 40, will dance together, men and women, etc., etc. They are far away from the Chardal side, the combination of Haredi and religious Zionism that you have in Smotrich. But you have Ben Gvir. Ben Gvir is such a catastrophic that we have somebody like him in the Knesset and as important a key minister. That weakens Israeli democracy. The other thing is that we have a prime minister that has 3 charges of corruption, and there's no problem for the majority of the Jews in Israel that he'll go on being prime minister. In British terms, it's not done. It doesn't have to be something legally, but it's something culturally. It's not done. So what can be done? Till now I spoke about problems. Now I want to try to speak for 5-7 minutes about solutions. What I see that can be done to make Israel, as I will propose now, more Jewish and more democratic, liberal democratic at the same time. Not compromise between Jewishness and democracy, but more Jewish and more democratic. What I will try to propose is one thing. The majority of the Jews in Israel are both secular and religious. If I look at many of the religious Zionists, if I look at the traditionalists, if I look at some part of the secular in Israel, they want to take some parts from the Jewish religious identity, some part from the secular identity, and everyone according to where he is on the spectrum. I'll give you an example for myself. I learned, you see, I have a black yarmulke. I learned in yeshivot Harediyot, in Hebron Yeshiva in Jerusalem, in Mir, Koilel. Later on, I went to the army. I became part of religious Zionism, but I didn't have kippah suga. I sent my children to Religious Zionist Institute. But myself, I see that still there is a part of me that is Haredi. There is part of me that is religious Zionist and more modern Orthodox. And there is a part of me that is secular. When it comes to culture, so I have culture from both religious and secular things. I have about 6,000 books in my library in different rooms. So I have many, many religious books in Talmud, Torah, philosophy, Kabbalah, Hasidut, whatever. And I have many secular Jewish books of literature, of philosophy, of culture, etc. I have many non-Jewish books, thousands of non-Jewish books in different areas. And for me, all of them are my world. When I listen to music, it's more not Hasidic music, but it's more classical jazz and rock music. I'm going to cinema and I'm watching TV series, and I read a lot of literature, and I discuss all those topics with my students in my Torah lecture, Shiurei Torah, in shul. When I teach as political scientist, I don't bring my religious identity into the discussion. I speak as somebody who teaches politics. This is secular because it doesn't have any religious things. It's about earthly things, not about heaven. So great part of my life is secular. When I go to museums and there will be nude pictures, I will see them of the greatest artists. If I go to the Shulchan Aruch, I can't do that. If I see Syria there, and I don't think about something that is pornographic or even erotic, mainstream Syria, it's not according to the Shulchan Aruch, the way that the actors are dressed. So I want to see the series. I see the series. And like me, so many religious people. And we like sports, and we don't think it's bitul Torah. And at the same time, I teach us, and I learn every day Torah. And the Jewish identity, when I look outside and I see a tree, I see that there is God in the tree. So you can live in both worlds. And from the other side, there are many secular people. They take the car on Shabbat, but Shabbat is very important for them. Not according to the halacha, but Shabbat is very important to them. They want work on Shabbat. They don't want to make money on Shabbat. They want to be with the family. Sometimes they'll make kiddush. Some of them, the more traditionalists, will go even to shul for one davening or something like that. And then they'll take the car and they'll go visit places in Israel, or they'll go to restaurant, or they'll go to sports or whatever. And they try to have both things. Majority of the Jews in Israel keep Hanukkah, keep Leil HaSeder, and today the more traditionalists learn Leil HaSeder. They read the Haggadah. About 70% fast in Yom Kippur from the Jews, 70-something%. More than 80% believe in God. About 60% believe in heaven. 60% of the Jews. The religious are about 23%. So we have a mixed society. The same about Orientals and Ashkenazim, Sfaradim, Ashkenazim. Today, when it comes to, not Haredim, but when it comes to seculars and traditionalists and religious Zionism, about 40% are intermixed marriages. Left and right. How many people really believe today in the old dream of the right, of annexation of the greater Israel? Less than 30%. How many really people believe that there will be a peace tomorrow and we'll go back and give up? Less than 20-30%. The majority is somewhere in between. Jews and Arabs, not only within Jews. In the young generation of Jews and Arabs, many of them are closer in different fields. They can work together. Look at the hospitals and see how they work together. They have friendship together. Religious Jews, religious Arabs. Look in Magen David Adom. Don't know how you say it in English. And you'll see at the same car, you'll have like a Haredi person, religious, secular Jew, and Muslim Arab. The differences are there, but still they feel they are part of something, of a community. Most of the Arabs in Israel want Palestinian state to become an independent one, but they won't live there. They want to live in Israel. When they go to other Arab states, they are defined as the Israelis Arabs that are different from regular Arabs. They want integration, the majority. You have part that is fundamentalist movement in Israel of Arabs are very fundamentalist. They hate the state of Israel. They want that it will be replaced by a Muslim state with the laws of Islam, Sharia, let's say about 20-25%. But the majority are not there. So really, if the leadership of all the sections, Haredim and Chilonim. When it comes to Haredim, if Haredim will make army or Shirut Leumi, they will work in ambulances, in hospitals, in firefighters, whatever, like some of them do already, and in economic things, and they'll go to economy and they'll learn the basic thing that needed, mathematics, English, etc. The gap, they will work together, seculars and Haredim. And they'll see that there is much in common. Today we have about 15% who are modern Haredim. That can be 45%. And that can be a blessing to the economy, to the feeling of one nation. And then you can teach also democracy and see that there are great parts in Judaism that are democratic. The rule of majority, the importance of every human being that was created by God's image, the importance of freedom of not having slaves, the importance of having an economy that won't have a huge gap between rich and poor, the importance of every creature, what we call kvod habriot, the dignity of man. There are so many important ideas in the Bible, in the rabbis, in Talmud and Mishnah, in Rambam, in other places that you can build upon them modern, democratic, liberal principles. But the Haredim don't know that. Nobody teaches them that. And one of the reasons is the gap. But if the gap will be closer, then it will be much easier. And I'll finish in the next remark, and then I'll open it for some questions. If we'll take from the Jewish values and ideas, the most important ones, which are moral and social, ואהבת לרעך כמוך, ואהבתם את הגר, you have to love the people who is the ally, is not the Jew. צדק צדק תרדוף, fighting against corruption, according to Yeshayahu chapter 1, Isaiah chapter 1, and many, many others. If you take from them, from the Bible and the Chazal, these ideas, and at the same time will weaken the power that the rabbinate have forcibly on Jews in Israel, that make them hate Judaism, then you'll be able to change the whole atmosphere of the seculars in Israel. They are not against Judaism. They are against the power of the religious institutions. Alexis de Tocqueville, the great French sociologist and philosopher in the first half of the 19th century, in his very important work, Democracy in America, wrote that most of people want to have tendency toward religion. Why? Because religion deals with issues that are key for human beings, issues of destiny, issues of meaning in life, issues of people who have sufferings, etc., death. What can ruin it is when the religion won't deal with the moral issue and the philosophical issues and the existential issues, but because of power that will be given to them by politics and by money, they will deal with current issues and try to be very forceful. And then people will hate religion and people will be against them. That he said what happened in France. In America, where there was a separation, and it's not a separation of the identity, the Christian, Hebraic Christian identity. No, America has what we call civil religion that is based on Bible. The Bible is very important to America till today. But they take from the heritage of the Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, or let's say Hebraic ideas, they take from them the more social, family issues, justice issues, etc. And they don't allow one section to rule the others. And that's the separation in America. Not that they want America to be. So America is a secular state, but a religious nation. So if something like that will be able, and in Israel it's easier to do than in America. And at the same time, as Jews will allow Christians, Muslims, the identity and the dignity as equal, because all of us are created by God's image. If we will go that way, and because of that, we'll try to at least make the lives of Palestinians in the West Bank better, even if we don't have an immediate solution. And if we'll improve the relations between Jews and Arab Palestinians in Israel itself, the citizens, Arab citizens, then I really believe we can build a unique Israel, an Israel that will be something that will be admired by the majority of the young generation of Jews in America and the world. You don't have to cancel the Jewish side. You just have to emphasize the moral, social sides of Judaism, and not the forceful and political sides of, or ethno-nationalistic sides of Judaism, as so many Jews are doing today in Israel. Thank you very much. This is the main lecture that I deliver. And now I would like to open it. You are not many, so everyone can say what he thinks. I'll be very happy to hear questions about the lecture, about other things. Okay?
Thank you, Moshe. Who would like to go first? Victor? Oh, sorry, you just...
No, I don't always like to be the first one to go, but let me try that. Moshe, I thought that was inspiring. I really did. I've just come back from an ELNET conference. I don't know if you know about ELNET, trying to look at Israel against, with Europe and everything. And one of the big issues that came out of the conference was the reluctance that people felt to support Israel in the time of this current government. And we're trying to explain to them that governments come and go, but actually Israel has got so much to offer, and Israel, and to be protected, and all the political stuff that's going on. And I had some discussions with some very key Israelis actually around the West Bank, and your comments are, to my mind, very realistic compared to what, in line with what they were saying, that, it's going to be very hard to solve, that they've got their own administration, they haven't got their own land, but that's their choice almost, and their ability to self-govern. So that side of it, I'm very comfortable with. I thought what was inspiring was your vision of not coerce of Judaism for everybody, but also secular at the same time. And I think the word that I found most important, and I hope I'm right about this, was coercive. It's coercive Judaism, which everyone seems to be worried about and scared about, in the same way, the imposition of that on other people. So what I was hearing, and I just want to give that context, what I was hearing was that both the pro-overhaul people are saying they're doing it to protect democracy, because that they were voted in, Netanyahu's group and Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, because that's what we knew, those policies, although I hear that maybe they didn't know how extreme they were. And the democracy of the secular saying we're losing democracy, and that's why they're out of the streets. That's why I could see them from my window in Netanya, saying it's the end of democracy. Your vision is like a moral vision in my way of thinking. How, and I hope when you comment, you'll see whether I've got any of this completely wrong, but how do you see in the short term to satisfy the British Jews, the American Jews, that there is still democracy in Israel, when both the left, if you will, and the right, but I heard what you said, it's not really those, are both saying it's the end of democracy if we don't get what we want?
Okay, first I'll tell you that I think I am optimistic that what we saw in Israel which never happened in Hungary or Poland or the other places where populist leaders changed part of the system. And it became like what we call a hybridic system, mixed democracy and dictatorship. It's not only dictatorship, because there are some democratic institutions still in Hungary and in Poland, and it's still part of the EU. But there are some. In Israel, there wasn't any social movement that went out. What happened to the seculars in Israel, especially the young generation of seculars, and not only seculars? My daughter went to almost every demonstration. She's religious Zionist, modern Orthodox, but she went to almost every demonstration. And today you'll see many religious Zionists who are part of the right, but the moderate right, will go to demonstration in Yerushalayim, in different places, some even in Tel Aviv. You'll see more Oriental Sfaradim in Be'er Sheva and other places will go to demonstrations. So what is happening is that they understood that what the government originally wanted to do was very extreme. Even you really need important reforms in the system of the judiciary. I was very, very for that. I discussed it with President Barak, ex-President Barak of the Supreme Court many times. I was with him in great conferences 3 times. And I told him, always facing the audience, and I told him, look, you went to that extreme that you'll get the extreme other side that will come against you. I am not the extreme. I am, let's say, 70% with you, 30% not with you. But you won't get people like me. You'll get people who are 80% against you or 100% against. And not only because what you do, but because of your rhetoric, that we will decide, we are everything we can do, etc. So the majority of the Israelis want important reforms, and the majority of the center is there. Yair Lapid was there, wrote a lot about reforms needed in the system. What they try to do is not reforms. They tried really to make some sort of solution. And that failed. I can already say it's failed. And Netanyahu is not there anymore. So if Netanyahu won't give the backup to Yariv Levin can't do anything. And what can be done is, the better thing is that there will be an agreement about the key issue of how you appoint judges, that you won't make a politicization of the appointing of judges, which is catastrophic, and appointing of the advisors, Yoetz Mishpati, Memshala, etc., the advisors, they won't be part of the political system and they won't be obliged to people from the center of the Likud, etc. This will ruin the separation of powers in Israel. So if you make now an agreement about that, and then you'll have a committee that with people from different sides that will decide what are the key reforms that really are needed in the system, I think that in 1 month you can have 10 important reforms, because the system needs reform, but not the things that will ruin the separation of power between, because anyway the government is the leader of the Knesset. The Knesset is not independent. It's not a Congress versus president in America. In Britain also it's not totally independent. But in Britain you have tradition, and you have importance of the opposition, and you have popular dialogue, and you have many things in the political culture of Britain that you don't have in Israel. So we need to stop the problematic side of this revolution, and then to think about reform. So many people really start, their trial, and then the answer is after 7, 8, 12 years. It's really abused. And the Supreme Court took too much power into their hands. You have to moderate it, okay, but not to weaken the system at all. Moderate. Make true separation of powers. That's great. That's Republican ideas, that's liberal ideas, very good. As it comes to after what will be later, I think that if in this year we will go to a war against Iran, and I believe that will happen. If this will happen, Netanyahu, because Iran is very close to the bomb, and Iran is becoming the leader of the Middle East now, America is weakening, and because of what happened in Israel, Iran is stronger, and Saudi and Jordan and others, and Syria is coming back to the Arab world. They are very problematic trends. Israel will probably have to go to war against Iran. So, in order, to bomb the key places of the atomic industry. And then I don't know what Iran will do, whether it will go and attack Israel with thousands of missiles, or whether it will send Hezbollah and Hamas and whatever. But I guess that there will be some sort of war, and there is a risk to the life of thousands of Israelis. In order to do something like that, to avoid Iran from becoming the leader of the Middle East with an atomic bomb, which will change everything and the destiny of Israel, you must have Memshelet Achdut Laumit. You must have a government that will be in the center, Netanyahu, Gantz, and Lapid. And I believe that Netanyahu will accept, and then I think that what the judges in the court try to send the lawyers from both sides in the Netanyahu trial to make some sort of arrangement between themselves. I think you can have an arrangement that will take Netanyahu without any prison out. Netanyahu will have to, in court, he won't be able to change it, to say that after 2 years or whatever, he's leaving the cabinet and he won't be a prime minister, but nothing will be against him. And then there will be election, or there will be a partnership between Likud and center-left, and then you can really ease the tension, because there are many people in the Likud, at least 10 important people in the Likud, in the Knesset, that don't want this tension. They are not Yariv Levin, and they have some power, but they are very weak against Netanyahu. If Netanyahu will leave, and he himself, if he will be able to deliver sort of war against Iran, even if many people will be killed there, but the bomb will stop for some years, and then who knows what will happen in Iran itself, because then maybe there will be revolution in the streets in Iran itself. You don't know what will happen. So if something like that will be, and Netanyahu will be able to show this is an historic success that we together, I with Gantz, with Lapid, but I was the leader, we have done. And for Netanyahu, what his place in history is very important. And he's already done some important things in economics and other things. And the settlement, the treaties, Abraham treaties, he has done some important things. He has done some very bad things, but he has done some important. So I think that will be the time that Netanyahu will retire. If I agree, if I'm right, nobody can tell you. You know what they say about political scientists, that they have one unique capacity. They can tell you what will happen, probably. They are not prophets, but they'll say probably something like that will happen. And when what is happening is the other way around, they say the other way around was really needed to happen. Okay? So that's really unique capability. So I don't know whether I'm right. If I'm right, then after the war with Iran and after Netanyahu going down, we'll be able to have much quieter state without any you won't be able to be afraid that democracy is in danger. And then you can start working about the key issues, how you make the Haredi more moderate, how you can bring together Arabs and Jews who will work together and will, because the potential for Israel from economic, we can be one of the 10 best economies in the world. We are already in the way to become one of the best 10 cultures of the world. In literature, in cinema, in music, in television, in many other things. And so we really have the potential, the place that Israel has in many states. In many states, even under Netanyahu, in India, which is going to become a huge empire, it's very close to Israel. And if you look at Europe, if you look to states in Africa, if you look to states in East Europe, to America, Center and South America, Israel is a leading force. And the potential is huge if you use the Arabs and the Haredim in the economy. We really can become a huge force. So for long term, I'm optimistic. For the immediate term, let's see. But I'm less pessimistic than I was 2 months ago. Because and in the years to come, people all around the world will learn what happened here in the streets, the democratic protest in the streets. I am one of the committee, the leading committee board, the leading board of one of a great movement called Darkenu. I don't know whether you heard about it, but it's a very important force, and we really are key. We have a key importance in those demonstrations. We have about 3,000, 4,000 people who are registered as supporters of the movement. And I changed it a little bit because it was a left and they asked me to come and I changed it to become more center. So now it's center left. The chairman is Arshai, who is people from high tech, and he was a minister for science under Gantz. And we really make changes, and I see now that we have more supporters from the right. We never had supporters from the right. The right try to portray us as very extreme left that get money from foreign ministers around Europe, etc., which all is lies. And so now we are becoming stronger and get a lot of money, and we are involved in many, many demonstrations all around Israel. And I see what's happening. And one thing that really I'm very happy about is that we brought the flag back to us. The flag was captured by the extreme right. And now the flag is back also for the center left. So I am quite optimistic for the far future, much more than I used to be 2 months ago.
Well, thank you, because I was really worried we were going to finish on too pessimistic a note. So I'm glad you brought it round to some optimism, because I know with the pessimism, absolutely.
The long and winding road, said Paul McCartney.
Yes. So I think what we need to do is bring you back in a few months or a year to see how right you were and what's happening in the meantime. Moshe, thank you so much. That was a brilliantly put together hour, and you can see how people appreciated it. So thank you. And next week we have Eitan Shamir on Moshe Dayan. And so something completely different when we go back into history again.
He's very good. Eitan is very good, and now he had a book out on Moshe Dayan, he's very good. He's a great expert, and he has very unique and new perspectives, which are important. Yeah. Okay,
as long as that's not going to be pessimistic. Yeah. We need some optimism. Okay, thank you, Moshe. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, especially for doing
just send me that I will be able to show it to my students. Okay?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.